Hi, I'm CJ Sorensen, and I've started a new program called CJ's Chat Box. The reason being, I would like to know some of the people here in the village at a deeper, more personal level. Many of the people here have got such interesting lives and experiences to share, and I think they should be shared with the people here that live in the village. So, welcome. Maybe you're one of those people. If so, give me a call. Maybe you'll be my next guest on CJ's Chat Box. Today, on my chat box, I have a wonderful, interesting lady named Noreen Conlon, who is a daytime TV Emmy winner, which we will get into a little bit later. But welcome, Noreen. Happy to have you here on my chat box. Let us begin at the beginning, because you were born in New York. Were you in Queens?
I was born and raised in Parkchester in the Bronx, and it was the largest housing development in the United States for many years.
Yeah.
With playgrounds and all kinds of good things, and 100 kids a year older, 100 kids a year younger.
Oh, well, sounds like a great place to grow up. But your mom passed away when you were young, 5.
Yes, I was 5. She had heart issues, and she had open heart surgery and passed away during it.
Which really made a difference in your life, because you said at that time, then you went to, it was just you were an only child, so you went to live with an aunt and uncle, and then only came home on weekends to be with your dad. And your dad was a postal worker, I believe. He was a wannabe actor all of his life. But tell me a little bit about the difference between when you used to come home on weekends until when you came home at 10 to live with your dad. The difference you saw with.
Well, when I came home on weekends, Dad and I had fun together. We ate hot dogs and hamburgers and watched movies and stayed up late, and it was fun. And when I moved back with him, we had to both kind of learn how to cook and keep the house. And he was a lecturer. You know, I had my aunt to go to if I had a problem. And now if I said, oh, someone hurt my feelings, my father would say, you're going to have problems when you grow up. It won't be, you don't really have problems now. And so I distanced myself from him because I felt that he didn't love me. I could not feel his love.
Right. And later in life, you did discover that after, well, we're going to talk later about what happens with your father, but the fact that why you felt so distant that he wasn't able to give you what you needed was partly because he was a male and not a female, and he couldn't give you the same thing a woman would, the nurturing kind of thing. He gave you what a father could give you, and you said that helped you a great deal later in life when you were again having a relationship with your dad.
It was much later. At the point when after I got out of high school, I went to work for American Airlines, and I thought I was doing just fine. And one day, and we also were able to fly for like $20 to Puerto Rico or Hawaii and all that good stuff. And one day the person came to me. I was doing accounting where we build other parts to other airlines and things like that. And they said, you need to quit or we're going to fire you for being late. What? So that was 2 days before my father was going to Puerto Rico. So you can imagine he was not happy about that.
No.
But the next day I went to an employment agency in Manhattan, and they sent me to a television production company with a man named Bob Stewart to be a receptionist. And they hired me immediately, and I didn't even know we had television companies in New York. So I was delighted, and I started out as the receptionist, and because I was always curious, I would go and talk to other people, and they would show me what they were doing and why. And Bob Stewart always promoted from within. He had created Password and Price is Right and To Tell the Truth when he was at Goodson Hodman. Now he was on his own, and 5 years later he had a show called The $10,000 Pyramid.
I've heard of that.
It became the $100,000 Pyramid later, but I became the associate producer of the pilot and the show. and we were on the air for about 2 years, I guess. And there was a big writers' strike in California, so the celebrities couldn't fly in to do our show at that time. So we sent the whole set and our staff, the whole bit out. We went to California.
One thing back before we get to California, because I think it's interesting to me the fact that even though you were let go at American Airlines and you never got to be a stewardess because you were too short, you said.
That's right.
Because they had height requirements then. But the fact that you got a job as a receptionist at a production company, and the fact that you were so curious, and I think that's a really important part of you, is your curiosity, is that you were typing up scripts, you were typing up thank you notes, and doing all the things receptionists do. But when you were curious and asked people about things, they were more than willing to tell you. And that's how you, and because Bob Stewart, the boss that liked working in promoting from within, perfect for you because you were sharp, you were interested, and you moved up very quickly. So I think that was, again, so important in New York for you, that good start. Then when there was a writer's strike, they had to move everything to California, which at the time they thought it was going to be a temporary thing. But when you got to California, things were different. Now you can tell a bit about that.
Okay, so actually working on a staff, with a staff like that you work with for years, it really is like a second family. So that also, my good friends that I grew up with and my friends from my shows really became my family.
Interesting when you say that, because the word you used was grew up with. Because, again, you're an only child. So you literally, these people that you worked with quite closely, became a family that you grew up with. And that type of, and I think that was, to me, important to hear about production companies, TV, whatever it was. You did mainly TV. But the fact that, whether it was a cameraman or whatever they were as part of the production crew, became like family. And because of the trust, then you would take them when you go to a different place. They kind of, but the fact that you said, I grew up with them, I think that's important, because we go through some stages of growing up that probably aren't always so fun, but those people were right there with you.
And that was very important to me. So when I get to California, Dick Clark had been the host of the Pyramid Game Show. So he helped me make contacts in California, which was really nice.
Oh, nice.
And I became the associate director on Newlywed and Dating Game with Chuck Barris.
Oh, yes.
That was really fun. Really, really fun.
Yeah.
So that was for about the first year. And then I became the relief associate director for Days of Our Lives.
Okay.
And that was a big change for me because I had done only game shows. And with Days of Our Lives, when someone walks into a room, you have to have a sound effect for the door to close, or the clock has to be the same time it was yesterday. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that happens with a drama that I had not been exposed to. So I loved doing it, even though you had to be there at 6 in the morning.
And you're not a morning person, I take
part
it.
Of the
but
day.
the detail that you had to then learn, because game shows, it just seems like it moves pretty quickly in different contestants and so on, but having the same people and having to pick up, because people notice that. Like, okay, the last scene was yesterday and we saw the clock was such, so yeah, you have to pay attention to those. The difference between soaps and game shows, was there a plus on both of them or a negative? Which ones did you enjoy, the game shows more, or did you like the soaps?
I really liked them both because it was so different. I had made a home in game shows, so now this was something totally new and interesting. Yeah. So I really liked that. And then within that same year, I met my most important mentor, whose name is Larry Einhorn, and he brought me into the world of low-budget variety shows. And for the next 15 years, we did, the National Easter Sale Telethon, the National March of Dimes Telethon, Mrs. World Pageant, Mrs. America Pageant. And then in 1978, we did a show for ABC called Kids Are People Too. And we won the Emmy for it.
Oh, you won the Emmy for that.
Children's Entertainment Series.
That had to be a high.
That
had to be a real high. You know what else, when you were talking about the fact that you like both of them, the soaps and the games, the part that keeps surfacing with you is the curiosity to know more and more and more about this and this and this. That, and therefore, again, you liked them both, but you had to learn more. But that was just part of your makeup again, is that I love learning, and it was in a scope of still production, but different kinds. And I'm sure that that definitely was very visible for the people that you worked with, Larry and many of the others that you worked with in the production crew. So that to me is also part of who makes Noreen Noreen.
Right. And with Larry, with the variety shows, we did one in Australia, one in Hawaii. We did them in Vegas, in Reno. So it was really fun and the same crew. We did all these shows together. So again, it was a family moving around.
Right. And did a lot of traveling, it sounds like. In the days when traveling wasn't so awful. Where you had,
but, winning the Emmy changed my life.
Really?
Yes. I was recruited to be the vice president of daytime for Columbia Pictures Television.
Wow.
Where I was in charge of Days of Our Lives, because they own the show, so Days of Our Lives came along with me, and also The Young and the Restless, which they also owned.
Forever and Ever?
Yes, and I was also in charge of any development that was done. So.
Did you get, I think you said also that down the road you got involved with some new things. Was that an exciting part, is to develop new things, new kinds of either game shows or soaps or something that wasn't already established? Was that whole creative process really fun for you? Huh?
Yes, that was something that I was definitely really into. And I kept trying to help people get new shows on the air. Oh, and I forgot to tell you one thing. When I was at NBC, Fred Silverman, who was the president of the network, canceled Wheel of Fortune and put David Letterman on daytime. I like David Letterman, but not in daytime. He was saying things like, why are you housewives at home eating potato chips and getting fat? Why aren't you out doing something with your life? Click, 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 click. So I kept bugging Fred, put Wheel back on, put Wheel back on. And this is before Pat Sajak and Vanna White were even thought of. And finally, 3 weeks later, he said to me, why does everybody like that show? I said, well, did you ever play Hangman when you were a kid? He said, no. So I taught him the game. And that night, secretary called and said, Fred said you can do whatever you want with Wheel of Fortune. So I put it back on the air right away.
Good for you, and it's still running.
30 some odd years later. So I think that was a pretty good decision for NBC.
But again, the part that impresses me the most is that you are this tiny, petite little gal that's powerful, and not in the day when that was the thing, to be a powerful woman. That was not your intent. You just knew it was right, and therefore you were not intimidated by Fred Silverman or anyone else by saying, listen to what I'm saying here. I know what I'm talking about. And he listened, finally. Finally listened. But yeah, I think that takes a lot of guts, and you had it, and you stuck to it, and, that's a wonderful part of your life as well.
Back to Columbia. At the end of my 2 years there, like you said, women weren't in high roles much. In the whole vice president meeting with nighttime and budgets and all that, I was one of 2 women. The other one was somebody became a good friend of mine named Meryl. She did casting, and she did all the Mary Tyler Moore shows and things. But everybody else was a male, just the 2 of us.
Did you have trouble having them listen to you with your ideas? You did. So you had to just be patient, and eventually they get worn down, or they would agree with you, or how did you work with that?
Well, sometimes you just had to grin and bear it. But the problem, and there's still a problem with it today, they don't want to trust new companies, because if the show doesn't do well, then whatever station bought it, that person's in trouble. They may lose their job. Where if they buy it from an existing strong company, that won't happen. So there's very few newbies that make it in the business.
Right. And I think that was when you touched upon the fact that there was a lot of politics, and it wasn't the kind of politics we're thinking about here. It was the entertainment politics, going with someone that was established and safe, rather than taking a chance on someone that had a new idea, new creativity, that was so prominent there that you knew that when you would, try to push for something, the chances if they were brand new, it wasn't going to fly because they wanted to be safe.
Well, to my great surprise, I went to President of Columbia, Herman Rush, and said, I'm not going to renew my contract. I want to go and work on a show where I'm part of a family again. I don't want to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, I can't believe you want to work that hard, but if you do, I will give you a contract to create your own shows here at Columbia. I'll give you offices, I'll give you everything that goes with it, but you'll only get a salary if you have a show in development, but we'll pay for everything else.
Wow.
Said.
Yeah.
So for the next 2 years, I was in development with Columbia. We did win America Sweepstakes.
So, wow, it paid off.
Well, it was written up in Time magazine as the game show of the future because we had figured out how to have people at home play along and win prizes.
Oh.
So we immediately got an air pickup, but before we got on the air, it was rescinded because the top people were afraid to do it.
See?
So that's still in my drawer.
Nobody can take it away from you.
That's right.
Nobody can take it away from you. So how long now, you decided not to go back to New York when the rest of them did after you initially came out. How long are you then in New York with Beth with these different shows and operas? And
Well, I'm in California.
Yes.
So I was in California for 15 years.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And was it then that you got the call about your father?
Well, first I got a call from MCA Universal.
Okay.
Who said, we'd like you to move over to us. Okay, so MCA Universal called me in December of 85 and said, we're going to beat your deal with Columbia. We'll give you the same deal. Plus, we'll give full salary to you and your staff. So it's 1985, December. I just have this great deal. I can't wait to start in January. It's my birthday.
Oh. And
all my television friends had a barbecue for me at my house. And just about time to eat. And the phone rings. It's my father. So I knew this would take 5 minutes. All he ever says is, hello, how are you? Got to go now. Bye.
Yeah.
But this time it was different. This time he said, I'm in the hospital in New York. I have cancer. They want to take my kidney out. You need to come now. I was not prepared for this.
No.
I was 42. It never dawned on me my father could get that sick. And my friend Merrill came in. She knew something was wrong, and I said, I can't just close down and go to New York, and I'll ruin my career, I'll lose my house. And she said, just sleep on it. You'll know what to do, you always do. So I gave her a big hug, and we went out and finished off the birthday party. And that night I found myself, instead of sleeping, I was packing and making flight arrangements for the morning.
Okay.
So I went to New York. He was in Mount Sinai Hospital, and they said he should just stay here. And I said, first of all, it's December and it's freezing, and it takes 3 months to recover. We'll be freezing to death. I don't think anybody's cleaned his apartment since I moved out 15 years ago. Where are we going to stay? Right. So Dad had finally agreed to come to California. And so we flew back on Christmas Day. And my house was a little, I emphasize little, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. It had a den and a living room, but it was a small house. And I knew Dad, he would be following me everywhere, particularly lecturing. Now, you're buying food at 7-Eleven. If you went to Safeway, it'd be so much cheaper.
Right.
So my friends came over a lot. They knew him from former visits, and that was a way to derail him, because when he was around other people, he loved to tell jokes, and he would say, you know, I sang in vaudeville years ago, don't you? And he was on. Yeah. When I was there, he wasn't so on. Right. So it was going well, but his room, once you pulled out the bed, there was almost no room. So if he was watching television in the den, I'd go to the living room and make phone calls. He would be there 5 minutes later. It was just like, so I'd say, okay, New Year's Eve, the doctor isn't till January 6th. We're going out. And Meryl and my friend Sid, was my production coordinator, come. Go to a great restaurant, have a lovely dinner, and we take a break outside before dessert. And they had a piano player at dinner. All of a sudden, I hear somebody singing, "What are you doing New Year's?"
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh.
My father
Oh,
at the mic.
sweet.
Yeah, it was very, very sweet.
Oh.
So it was a great moment.
Yes.
And it was a great way. He wasn't on meds or anything yet. So it sort of relaxed all of us.
Right.
And then we went to the doctor on January 6th. And that was a bit of a letdown because they insisted upon doing all the tests that New York did again. And I was supposedly going to do a pilot soon. So I pulled my staff together and said, we're going to have to close down for a month because I have to go to all these appointments. And Lynn said, I'll go. I'll drive to everything for you. And so everybody volunteered. So we broke it down. So Sid and Lynn took turns driving. I went to the important ones, but when they went, I could be in the office. And then the other part of the staff, Sarah, the casting person, Lori Golden, my associate producer, and my PA, Beth, stayed and put everything together. So we were able to do my dream. I did not want to give my business up, but we were able to because they helped be able to do caregiving and my business.
That brought up the point we talked about earlier too, was the fact that you knew you couldn't give up your life because you would be you're the sole support for you and your father, even though he's going into this.
Right.
And just getting this new job, and the fact that your family again rallied around you to say, don't do that, we'll help out, so that you didn't sacrifice your life in order to take care of your father, who you still hadn't had this great relationship with. And that to me was so impressive, because so many people not willingly self-sacrifice. They give up their lives and then just are angry the whole time because I had to put my life on hold in order to care for them. You didn't.
A lot of people become guilt-ridden.
Yes.
And that's why, and often people will even offer help and they'll say no because they feel like they're
imposing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But you knew, because they were family and because they knew they were part of what you were, your life that you were trying to keep going. So to me, that was just an absolute wonderful. Right. So did he have the surgery?
Well, I'll give a tip to people who want to help caregivers.
Okay.
Because most people say, let me know when you need food. I'll go to the store for you, or I'll do the laundry. And they'll never take you up on it because you're imposing.
Oh, okay.
But if you say, I'm doing my food shopping on Tuesday, have a list ready since you're going anyway. They'll take you up on it.
Wonderful.
So
wonderful.
It's things like that
nice
that
tip.
make a huge difference.
Nice tip. So when did he actually have the surgery then for the cancer?
He had the surgery in what would that be? In mid-January, towards the end of January.
And what hospital did he have that?
He had surgery at UCLA.
Okay.
And he was only there for about 3 days after surgery, and they were sending him home on Saturday, but didn't notify me till Friday, so we had basically no help. And he was so weak, I kept saying, please keep him for another day or two. They said, sorry, Medicare's up, no choice. And none of the nursing places were open, so I went home. Sid came and helped me. Larry's wife, Kay, was a nurse, so they helped.
But wasn't he in a coma after?
Not yet.
That happened after that? When did you do the kidnapping then? I want to get to the kidnapping.
You're going to be editing that for a minute.
Okay.
What happened was, he went to bed. We got him home, went to bed. And the next morning, I tried to wake him. And I couldn't wake him.
Oh, dear.
In the beginning, at 10 o'clock, I thought, my father sleeps late. No big deal. But when it got to be noon, I shook him, and he kind of fell over. And he was mumbling. So I called the doctor. And the doctor said, his kidney's fine. I said, but he's not.
Oh.
Call an ambulance. So the ambulance would only take him to the nearest hospital.
Oh, that's
and it was this little for-pay hospital that was like a quarter of a mile closer than UCLA. But they were, so we get there, and the doctor, there's no doctor for 5 hours, and my father's having tremors, and oh my God, it was terrible. So when the doctor finally came in, he said he's had a stroke, he's in a coma, and we'll know more tomorrow. The longer he stays in the coma, the more chance of recovery. So I come back again with Kay, the former nurse and my good friend, and she's explaining all the tubes, and they have his arms just tied to the bed because he would pull out tubes. He was in ICU. So I'm sorry, I forgot where I am.
Where you want him out of there. It's what you want him out of there, right? And out of that hospital.
Well, I try to get him out, and they keep saying you can't do it.
Yeah.
So he was in the coma for 6 weeks, and no change at all. Occasionally, you would see a baseball game on the ceiling or something, but 6 weeks. And Kay came with me every day.
Wow.
And so finally, they asked me to take him out in an ambulance to get some tests done. I said, oh, I can book that myself? They said, yes. So I called UCLA and said, I'm not taking him there. I'm taking him to you if you'll accept him. And they finally agreed to accept him. So we made all these plans for the great escape. And the day before, I walk into the hospital. I haven't been there all day. I go in the early evening, and there's my father sitting in bed. Where have you been all day? I want to get out of this place. It was like, let me tell you where you've been for the last 6 weeks. So
yeah,
we took him to UCLA. And
the great kidnapping, the great escape, yes.
The great escape.
That I loved.
And he spent 4 weeks there doing physical therapy, and it was a big difference. That hospital had everybody up doing physical therapy. There were no people with their arms tied to the bed. So it really is important to go to a good hospital.
A decent hospital, right.
Yeah.
But I think also the fact that you have to take charge. You can't follow just the doctor's rules or the hospital's rules, because sometimes you realize this isn't helping or this isn't the best thing. And I think that's what I admired, was that you didn't, you had your friends with you saying, I agree, we need to get him out of here. We need to do something a little bit more proactive. And you did. So now, how long was he then at UCLA?
4 weeks.
And then did he come back into assisted living?
No, he came back to home.
Okay.
And I brought in a half-time caregiver. And so I was able to work half-time, and she was there then.
Yeah.
And then in June, which was 6 months later almost, Larry, my partner Larry, called and said, are you going to be able to make the Victor Awards this year? They're coming up in 2 weeks. And I said, I need to get away.
Yes. Yeah.
I need a break. So I called around and found an assisted living place about 10 blocks from the house, and it was really nice. I really liked it. But problem, they didn't accept people for 2 weeks, only a month. So I signed him up for the whole time, thought maybe he'll really like it, and I'll get a break when I come back.
Yeah.
So we went to Vegas, and we did the Victor Awards, which is a sports award show that benefits City of Hope Hospital. And I've been doing it now for the last 10 years, I think, with Larry. And Sammy Davis Jr. was the host that year, and Muhammad Ali and Mr. T were on it, and they did a special tribute to Roger Maris.
Yeah.
He had just
broke some record, right?
Actually, he had broken the record with the Yankees. Yes, with
Babe Ruth.
And now he had just fought cancer for 2 years and passed away.
Oh my!
So it was
stars.
a tribute for him.
Wow!
So it was really beautiful, and I would call Dad frequently, so he felt part of it. But
yes,
he was really disappointed he couldn't come. But at that point, he could barely walk. That's why he was at UCLA. He was 88 pounds.
Yeah.
And it took the stroke and the coma took a lot out of him.
Right. So then, is he, when you take him out of the assisted living after you get back, and then when is this near his 80th birthday?
Well, first he gets well enough that and some friends of his. I kind of pushed him out to the Knights of Columbus because he had been in charge of all of them in New York. And so now he had friends in his life.
Okay.
And they talked him into volunteering at Valley Press Hospital.
Okay.
So he had a bit of a life of his own starting. And he went on senior adventure trips when he could walk again to the Grand Canyon and places like that with his friends. And so he was having a good old time for himself. And yes, his 80th birthday was creeping up.
And so you wanted to do something special, especially since they had told you that this cancer is not going to, get better, really.
Right.
You were...
UCLA told me that it had metastasized to his lungs, and they thought he would have about 6 months to live. And I said, you don't know my Irish Catholic father. He lived for 3.5 years.
He did. But you have a picture of him there during his 80th, but the part again that creeps up about his wanting to always be in showbiz, and that you decided to sign him up for some classes. You said acting classes. That was, So, how many of those did he go to?
Well, there were 4 little classes, and my friend Candace had come out for Dad's birthday, and she was a dancer in New York on Broadway, and she wanted to try her hand in LA, and so she started rehearsing with him and said, he's really good, you have to get him an agent. My about to be 80-year-old cancer-ridden father, we're getting an agent. Okay. So I knew somebody and called, and they signed him right away. Abrams Rubaloff, which is the second biggest firm of all in California. So we go to all these places, and he always comes in second. But it's an outing for us. I'm going with him on it. And some mornings he wouldn't even get up. He was too tired. He didn't feel well. But that almighty dollar, if they called for an interview, we were off.
Yeah.
So one night we get a phone call right before Christmas, and they've hired him. They want to hire him for this commercial, but it's already been hidden camera commercial. So all he has to do is sign and say okay, and it was for Senecot laxative. And at the end of it, they say to him, "Does it work?" And he says, "Does it work? It's wonderful." Okay. So that year he made $25,000
for that commercial. Oh, he had arrived. He got to live his dream. But this is the part that I find so, and then these circumstances that kind of, you don't have an option. You're the only child. He's got kidney cancer. He needs surgery. I don't want to stay in New York. I got to bring him out here. And by doing that, and then going through all the medical issues that were here, and then again, the friends, your friends really liked him, had a great time with him. He was always on. And then to actually take acting lessons and get paid for it. I mean, you made his dream come true, which is just, again, part of the whole
accidentally.
Accidentally. I mean, if you'd have set out to do that, nobody would have ever, but as it turned out, each step was, the greatest thing for that. So he got the money for the commercial. Did he stay involved in that, or how was his health at that point?
His health was beginning to fall, but so he wasn't really able to, but he loved watching them. He would go around the television waiting to see the same commercial over and over and over again. So,
but did you go, when you first took your trip to India, was that after your father had passed?
Yeah.
A long time afterward, or you had been involved in the ashram in LA?
He went through 6 months of getting more and more ill before he passed, and surprisingly he was home for St. Patrick's Day because he was in the hospital most of the time. And we went down to the wellness community where we had gone because they did really good psychosocial care for cancer patients. And he tried to stand up to tell a joke at the joke fest, but he couldn't get his legs under him. So I couldn't even believe he tried. And so I wound up holding him up so that he could tell his joke, and he won the joke fest.
Oh,
And that was the only time in 1989 that he had left the house other than to go to the hospital.
Oh my stars.
So that was really moving for me.
Yes, yes.
And he passed away May 24th, 1989, and he wanted to be buried with my mother in New York. It was his, one thing he wanted.
Okay.
So we went off on an airplane the next day, him and me. And we had a funeral in New York, and then I came back to California, and he had so many friends that we had a memorial there for him, and he filled the church.
Wow.
Candace sang "The Wind Beneath My Wings"
and
Ave
wonderful.
Maria for me.
Yes, yeah.
And then I decided that I needed to take a break, and I was getting disappointed in television because I had maxed out. I had done everything I could do, but I really didn't believe that they would really ever put shows on for anyone.
Okay.
You know, so I decided, well, I'm going to take a couple of months and see what happens next for me. And I went to a meditation place and meditated for a couple of months, and it was relaxing. It helped me get through grief. And then I was invited to make documentaries to help raise money for children. We were also giving milk every day. There was a mobile hospital that treated 40,000 patients.
Wow.
We did 2,000 cataract surgeries for people who were blinded, and it's mostly because of close proximity to the sun and not enough good nutrition.
Oh, wow.
So they also went to the government to try and help farmers get more land to grow their crops. So I stayed for all of winter to do that. And so I wound up going back every year for the next 7 years. I spent winters in India.
Wow.
Making documentaries, and it was more important to me than Miami.
Yes. Well, and again, that part that there's just never, I mean, it's just so easy for you, it seems, to produce, like, and there you did the documentaries, and such a good cause to really help them. But wherever you went, you know, yes, you went there to meditate and relax and everything, but you also found a way to be very productive. So you did this every year for 7 years.
Oh, yeah. I'm not done yet.
Oh, my stars.
Right.
Yes.
Now I'm 50, and I decide it's not my turn to be in India anymore. So I moved to Hawaii.
Okay.
And but of course I wound up getting a job as grant writer and PR person for Special Olympics Hawaii statewide, which is about 3,000 athletes.
Wow.
It was amazing, and just the sweetest, kindest people. And I also got to know a lot of Hawaiian people because they were involved in it with their children and all. So again, it was like another family. And Hawaii has that feeling. They believe in extended families and all that. So it was really wonderful.
Nice fit.
And one day I went to a Rotary Club meeting to speak about asking people to come out to volunteer at our summer games, because we had summer games actually in Hawaii.
Okay.
And this other woman got up and spoke about having students come from foreign countries and that you would host them for a year. And some of them were from poor countries, like the Russian countries and Korea and whatever else. So we happened to bump, there was 400 people at the meeting, but we bumped into each other in the parking lot. And she said, "Would you be interested in doing this?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a family. I think the person might be lonely." I have the girl for you. She lived with only her father. He was a driver. He wasn't home much. So a couple of days later, she calls me and says, "You've been approved." I said, "I didn't know I applied." Okay. So I thought about it. And so finally she said, "Look, if you're not happy or she's not, I'll move her." I said, "Great." So that August, in comes Christina Apostel, who is from Moldova, which is the poorest country in all of Europe. And she is the most delightful person I've ever met. She's kind, she's sweet, she speaks Russian, Romanian, French, and English.
Wow.
Not fluent in all of them, but close enough.
Is this in Hawaii now?
Yes,
that she
in
comes
Hawaii.
To live with you?
She comes to live with me for her senior year of high school. I'm
Okay.
going to be her host mother.
Okay.
She walks in the kitchen and takes a look at everything and says, I've seen this in the movies.
Wow.
We open her suitcase. It's a fairly large suitcase. It has 2 outfits. It's a very poor country.
Oh my.
But she is the kindest person that I have ever met. Smart. She goes to school. It's her senior year. And a lot of the other kids were, they were partiers. They were into drinking, whatever. And they had to do a Shakespeare play for homework, and they had to do it in the class, and nobody would do it with her. So she did everybody's lines.
Oh, for heaven's sake. She was
Yeah.
very, very intelligent
Right.
and creative.
Right.
So that was the first
one.
first
Then
one.
2 years later, Maria, who has the nickname Masha, I had vacation rentals, and where I was, the housekeepers they didn't always show up. So I called the lady who had the students and said, do you have anybody out near me that would like to make some money? So they sent Masha and her friend Oksana, and they were cleaning and having a great time and so sweet. So Masha said, I'd like to stay for college. So I helped her get the application, and she got a small scholarship. Actually, Christina got a scholarship before that. Christina went to the University of British Columbia in Canada. Masha wound up at it was a school in Hawaii, Hawaii Pacific University.
Okay.
And then after Masha was a girl named Shaka Dot, who was from Uzbekistan. And she wound up, we got a scholarship to Ave Maria University in Florida. And she was the only Muslim person in the school. And she did great. She wound up president of her class and all this. And she fell in love with her college sweetheart and married him shortly after graduation.
And they got married in
the Catholic Church. She converted. And she asked me to give away the bride.
Oh, how nice. But now, are you still in Hawaii while you're getting these different girls and they're going off to college?
Right.
So you were really, not only are you a grant writer, everybody can use a grant writer, but the fact that you were able to help them get into colleges, I'm assuming that was probably due to you. They had to have the intelligence, but
they wrote their essays and stuff, and I cleaned up the English, and stuff like that. Yeah, I definitely helped.
Now, how many years ago was that you...
I met Christina. She came in the year 2000. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. And because we were closed down with COVID, we both bought desserts and had tea, and we celebrated on Zoom.
On Zoom. You can improvise very easily.
Right.
So now how many of them are married?
Well, we do have one photo of them when they first came. They were young and girls. They're all married. And Christina went on first she worked for Interpol for 7 years.
Wow.
After she graduated from college. And then she became an attorney, and now she's an attorney at the European Union in Belgium.
Oh, my stars. Do you get to see her?
She has a little baby bump because she's about to have a
she's
baby.
The one that's ready to have the baby.
Right.
So,
Masha.
Is that the one that just had the baby?
Masha just had the baby. She named the baby Nika, and she's married to Stephen from South America, Colombia, South America.
Oh.
And she works at the UN. She does accounting for all the embassies throughout the world. Once their budgets are set, she's in charge of keeping them honest on their budgets. And Shaka she went to med school.
Oh.
And her mom died of cancer when she was in high school and college. And she decided she wanted to go help the world. And she's doing it. And so she graduated, and her husband Colin, and they have 2 boys. She's in Pennsylvania now. And they have 2 boys, Zane, who's 2, and Naeem, who's 5.
So you're a grandma, too?
I'm a grandma 4 times.
Wow. I think that's your story just starts this only child with no mom, and how that has evolved, and how families just gravitate around you that speaks so much of who you are as an individual. I think that, and then they're all excelling. All these girls,
Well,
you know,
they bring some of the smartest ones from the country so
Mhm.
that they can go back and show some democracy to
Right.
their country, which
Yeah, makes
which
sense
they
to me.
do. And we're very close. I just got back from going to see Masha and her baby and Shaka and the boys. So I was just there a month ago. And we're as close now, even closer than we were before. And they still, their family can't get visas very often, almost never. So I'm the American mom.
Okay. Well, and the visa thing, was that bad before the pandemic, or has it just really gotten
No,
worse?
it's been bad all
It's been a
along.
while.
Yeah.
Okay. But to be the American mom so that they have that
Right.
stability there.
Right, and if
It's
something's
just amazing.
happening, their parents will say to them, "Well, is Noreen going with you?"
Oh, isn't that too
right?
sweet?
They want me along.
Yes, yeah. They feel everybody trusting everyone. Now, do you are all the friends that you had, Larry and his wife Kay, and the people that you worked with so long, are they still in touch, or are they still
Oh yeah,
around?
they live up in L.A. So,
They do.
Yeah.
So
They were my California family. They will always be my
Yes,
California family.
So, have you got anything planned? I think you mentioned once that you might write a book, and the book would be on caretaking. You said possibly. Are you still thinking about doing that, or?
I'm thinking about. Well, I've written the book.
Oh, you
The
have written
question
it.
is whether to publish it or not. It's called From Hollywood to Hospice.
Oh.
It's my story
Yeah.
plus Dad's story.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm hesitant is it's hard. I don't want to do all the what do you call it? Instagram and all that stuff.
Oh,
So I'm
yeah, yeah.
holding
The
back
social
on
media
that,
and-
and I'm thinking about trying to maybe do it as a film because it's really meant to help caregivers have a life, to keep a life too.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I hope that's what will come out from this.
And that, to me, again, when we were talking initially about the fact that you made that decision fairly quickly about the fact, I can't give up this life that I had created here in California to care for my father. He's got to come here, and you were still thinking that I'm going to be the caretaker, but you didn't even know at that time that everybody was going to circle around you and say, well, I can do this, I can take him for tests and so on, and they rose to that occasion. And that's a witness, again, for other caretakers that are put in your position to know that that works. They just have to look for ways to make it work.
If one opens oneself up,
Yes.
it works.
Yeah.
And it's a blessing. But we have to be open
Yes.
to do it.
So the book has been done. You're just not sure as to what you'll do with it, how you'll make it a film or publish it or whatever. Anything else on your agenda that you, or are you just going to relax and be a grandma and a mom?
Well, I'm doing some shooting and stuff for the comedy club. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm involved there.
Good, good.
For Joey Sims and Jokes. It's live the fourth Thursday of every month
Right.
here in Laguna Woods. So
Yeah.
that's taking some time. And other than that, I just want to have fun.
There you go. That makes sense to me. And when you have a talent and a personality like you have, you're not going to sit still for very long because something is either going to attract you to what they're doing, or they're going to see what we have to offer and ask if you would be interested, like Joey did. Would you be interested in helping me produce there? And of course, you're willing to do that. So I'm really proud and happy that she actually called me and she said, you got to meet this lady. She's really interesting. And we've had a few talks together. And yes, I do find that. But again, I did not anticipate. I thought I would talk about your Emmy and about what you did. But when you brought up your dad and that whole caretaking that happened, I thought that was something that needed to be talked about and expressed, because it's not only were you telling your story, but you also told your dad's story, which is why I like the Hollywood to Hospice, because it's both stories.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
think that's important to tell, and how he, really enjoyed the last part of his life.
But also uplifts the story.
Yes.
Because it brings in some humor.
Yeah.
In addition to just hearing about cancer.
Right. Oh, exactly. And in our discussions too, that's one thing I noticed, that you're funny and you don't know it. You'll say something that to me just cracks me up because it's just a part of who you are. And I can't imagine that that's only happened now. I'm sure that happened throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that surrounded you in all your production programs and so on also were experiencing that type of
Some of my
of humor.
DNA from my father.
It's definitely, yes, you definitely got that Irish humor from Dad. Definitely. So, well, I'm so glad that we had this time together.
Me
It was
too.
really good.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for being with me today, Noreen. It was very much a pleasure to meet you, but also to hear all about your life, all the things you've accomplished, your family. It was really a great time. Thanks again for being here.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to come and tell you all about it.
Great.